Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Vaultcast, the official podcast of all things Vault Comics and beyond. We are joined once again by our fearless leader, our commander-in-chief. You know him, you love him, Mr. Adrian Wassel. How's it going, Adrian?
Oh, it's going great. Great to be back.
Well, this is a special one. I don't want to put you on the spot to gush about family, but this episode features the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Nathan Gooden. What can people expect from this conversation, Adrian?
Expect a conversation with a modern master. Nathan is truly one of the greatest artists alive today, and frankly, and I think one of the greatest artists to ever take up sequential storytelling. I've known Nate my entire life. He's my cousin, co-founder of Vault, sort of like a brother to me. Was there the day I was born, has seen me, run around the kitchen with my diaper falling off. So he's got lots of terrible stories to tell of my youth.
We tell a lot of those in this episode. He really gets into the embarrassing family stories on you specifically. It's like half the episode.
Excellent. That's great. That's perfect. He definitely never mooned any cars with my little white butt. So I think the thing to say about Nate is that I've never seen any artist in my entire life command so many different styles with such ease that it almost gets taken for granted. And I have to constantly remind myself as an editor-in-chief, an editor and friend, family member who's just lucky enough to work with him, that is such a rare generational talent. Nate can really command any medium and any style and do it so well that you forget that the way he does it is through just an absolute mastery of form and technique and his process. He has an extremely robust process, and you're going to get to hear about that. You're going to get to hear about character design and how he approaches art, how he thinks about every series as a story and a visual world that you're going to live in. I've seen Nate's pages, from the earliest days of just sort of drawing fan art to creating entire worlds like Barbaric that hundreds of thousands of people read and love. I would say, tune in. If you are an artist or anyone who appreciates the craft of sequential storytelling, this is the episode for you, because Nathan has a grasp of it that just honestly very few people have or ever will have.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Without any further ado, please enjoy our sit down with Mr. Nathan Gooden. We are joined by the man, the myth, the legend, the one and only Nathan Gooden. Mr. Gooden, how are you today?
First of all, thank you for having me. Thrilled to be here. Episodes at this point have been great, so I'm excited to join the show.
Well, when you threateningly slacked me and said, have me on the show or you're fired, I felt like it was the right thing to do. I'm kidding. For those of you unfamiliar, Nathan is not only the incredible artist and co-creator of Barbaric, worked on many Vault series, including Zojicon, The Rush, covers, stuff coming out all the time from this guy. But Nathan, as you heard on our previous episode with Adrian Wassel, is one of the co-founders of Vault. He's one of the big dogs. I like to think of you as the silent partner, Nate, because you're always listening.
That is true. We have a good team, good core. Me, Adrian, and Damien started this thing, and I believe in not having too many voices coming from the top. I like to listen, and I'll give my feedback through Damien or through Adrian, or whatever the topic is, and I can do it that way rather than just hey, here's another email on top of the email you just got,
Well, we heard a little bit about the founding of the company with Adrian on the last episode, and we'll hear a little bit more about it on our next episode when Damien joins us. But I wanted to get your perspective on those early days, because you broke into comics by doing your own self-published works to begin with, right?
Correct. I had this art degree and film degree and really just a passion for storytelling. And Adrian was graduating at the same time. Damien was graduating at the same time. And we all grew up loving comics together. So it was let's start with a comic. And so we made one, that turned into two, that turned into three, that turned into four, and eventually became a small publisher. And that shows we started getting approached from other creators of hey, we want to work with you, or we would love for you to publish our thing. So that was kind of the early days of Vault and CME as it was.
And before you really were, in your postgraduate life making comics and stuff, you were comics obsessed as a kid. You were obviously big into movies, big into animation. You were drawing a lot from a young age. What were some of the first things you remember drawing really vividly?
So my dad was an art teacher, high school art teacher. So I grew up with like a paintbrush, pencil, paper in my hand. And I remember one of my favorite memories was getting up in the morning, Sunday mornings with my mom. She would be sitting at the kitchen table doing her bills. And I would pick up this paper and I would read all the comic book strips like Calvin and Hobbes, things like that. And I remember just that was my early days of seeing this and trying to draw them and like copy them, things like that. And then that turned into like Saturday morning cartoons with the X-Men animated show, Ninja Turtles, all that stuff. And so like I grew up like that was my weekend, was really just consuming cartoons and comic strips. And then I remember, because I grew up in the country, so like I remember they built a 7-Eleven that was walking distance to me, and that was like the one outlet I had, and they had a spinner rack of comics in it. And so that was my early introduction into like comic books. I would walk there with like $1 to buy some Skittles and sit there and just read comics off the spinner rack for a couple hours, and that started the love right there.
What were some of those early titles that were on this 7-Eleven spinner rack?
Nothing was in order, it was just random issues, but I remember some Silver Surfer issues really grabbed my attention, and then I remember the one that really made me have to buy it was Weapon X. That was the first one that got me to that. I was like, okay, this art is meaningful to me. That was Barry Windsor Smith, I believe, and like I remember that was the first one that had to be like, oh, I have to have this. Like this has to come home with me. So yeah, issues like that, and then some Green Lantern as well.
All right, I'm gonna look up this 7-Eleven and try and find their diamond or their lunar number. I'll give them a call and see what they're ordering for Vault these days.
I wish spinner racks would come back in places like that. I loved it.
Right? I love a good spinner rack. Tim Seeley has spinner racks in his office, and I think that is like the coolest shit to just have spinner racks full of comics you've done. Like that's pretty neat.
That is pretty dope. I like that. I might have to take a note from that when I get my own office.
Oh yeah, dude. We're getting you spinner racks. I'll go on the hunt. We'll get on eBay. We'll go wherever. We'll find old spinner racks and we'll get you set up nice. So you're a kid, you're grabbing comics, you're drawing all the time, you're doing your own takes on all of these characters. Do you remember when you first tried to make something wholly original? The first time you tried to do something that wasn't based explicitly on an existing character?
Not specifically, but I remember it was around the time of Final Fantasy VII. The video game for
Yes.
I remember playing that game and just having my mind completely blown of like what's the story was, the environments, everything. And at that point I was getting a little bit better at art. So like I remember some of my friends would be like, well, what'd you draw this weekend? So I remember around then was kind of the time I was really developing my own stories, my own little shorts, my own little characters, things like that.
As you're getting better and trying to like branch out and do more things, and you're getting inspired all over the place, when did you really start to become aware of artists who were already working? Like who were some of those first folks that like you noticed their name in the masthead or on the cover of a book where you're like, that's an artist I love. This is an artist I'm going to pay attention to, and knowing them by name?
I mean, I could go to the obvious answer. Jim Lee. Our generation was like, oh, you can draw. But a little bit more personal for me, Frank Frazetta. When I first saw his covers for prose, I knew that was when I wanted to make a career out of it. Oh, this is what life's telling me. This is what I'm going to do for a living. Even if a book I had no idea what it was about, if he did a cover, painted a cover for it, I bought it. I collected it,
I mean, you can see that influence pretty clearly in a lot of the work on Barbaric. Frazetta's baked in the DNA.
Absolutely. Like whenever I'm like lost in my own head or like lost in a world where I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing with this character or something like that, I always just go back and like flip through my Frazetta collection. That's one collection that always come with me no matter where I've gone. I remember I was in like a little shoebox in an apartment in Brooklyn, New York for a while. But the one collection I could bring with me was I had to bring Frazetta. Like I have all of his Lord of the Rings prints. All those things have to come out with me wherever I'm going. Every kind of story I tell starts kind of there, and then I'll do a lot more research, a lot more reading around, whatever writer I'm pairing with at that time. I'll do more research, but it always starts kind of right there of like, that was my first love.
That's the touchstone. That's home.
When you're lost, just return home for 1 second. You'll find your way.
Speaking of home, obviously you grew up with Damien and Adrian, might as well be brothers. You spent an enormous amount of time together and now run a company together. You co-founded a company together. Running a family company, it's an interesting dynamic because you obviously have a deep, long, abiding personal relationship, and then you've got the business relationship on top of it. What were the early days of Vault like for you, co-founding with relatives, with your cousins? Like, what were those early conversations like? What were those early days like? Was there a marked change in your dynamic, or did this feel just like the most natural evolution of things?
It was fairly natural, just kind of felt right from the moment we said jump. Like, it was like, oh, this feels normal. This feels right. We should do this. Let's keep going. One of the earliest things we all said, and our Billy Adrian was one that said it first, of like, there's a difference between a family business and a business family, and we want to be the proper one. That was number one rule, was like, we're family first. We do this because we love it, not because we're trying to get rich or break the bank. We're here because we love it, we love each other, and we're going to make this thing because of our love.
I mean, that's a pretty good foundation to build from, and probably saw you through what I can only imagine was a pretty challenging first couple of years. Like, starting a company is always hard, but especially starting a company doing periodical publishing, and with where the market was in 2017, like, do you have any memories from those early days where you thought, damn, this is really hard?
Our first few shows, we did Ape in San Francisco. That was where we were, this is a ton of work. This is not just me getting to draw. Like, there's a business side to this as well. But I think, a lot of my nervousness came from the fact that I trust Damien and Adrian, not just the fact that I trust them because they're family, but I trust that they did their homework. I trust that they did the research before we jumped. That was the key thing for us, was just being like, trust me to give you a good product, trust me to give you good pages, and I'll trust you to get the show going and get the show lined up, and just tell me when my flight is, and I'll be there. So trust was a big thing in the beginning. If it was anyone else, I don't think it would have worked.
Dear listener, Nathan has continued that legacy of trust. And when I tell him I need you at this show, that's usually his response is, just tell me when to get there. Just tell me when my flight is, which I appreciate. It's a nice energy to work with.
This industry is hard enough. I try to make it a little bit easier. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think team player describes you better than just about anyone I've worked with. I'm not just trying to flatter you because the camera's on, but everyone knows you're a talented guy. We got eyes and can see the art. But anybody listening, Nate's amazing to work with. If you ever have the opportunity, count yourself lucky. You're going to have a good time and a good product by the end of it. One of the things that I think has been a hallmark of your art that I noticed immediately before we'd ever met, before I was working with Vault in any formal capacity, is your ability to have so many unique and fully fleshed out characters on the page. It's the old trope, like Superman and Batman are drawn exactly the same. Just one has a curl and glasses. They just look identical. But you do such a detailed job of giving bit characters, walk-on characters. I'm thinking about the waitress in the opening of the Wrong Kind of Righteous one-shot that just fully fleshed out, fully realized, fully designed, and with such a unique face. You're so good at making faces individual. So rather than making you accept a compliment, which will make you uncomfortable, what advice would you give to other artists to try and capture unique faces, to get each of their characters feeling like it's not just the same, model in a different wig and outfit?
Well, first of all, I appreciate that. One of my goals always is to make these rich environments, rich worlds. I think that's one of the beauties of working on independent comics, is I'm not beholden to a style or like an aesthetic look for a world. It's like, if you're working in Batman, Bruce Wayne has to look a certain way. For an independent world like this, it's always thinking about their background. The opening of Wrong Kind of Righteous, the bar made as an example. For me, it was like, okay, does she like her job or does she hate her job? So it's like a little checklist I go down before designing a character, or like even if it's just a throwaway character, it's like quick checklist. It might not be 10 bullet points long, it might be 3 bullet points long, of like, okay, she hates her job, she's been there too long, and doesn't like barbarians and Owen and all this stuff. So huge personality trait you can impact on the page of like, okay, she's probably older because she's been there too long. She's smoking because she hates being there. She doesn't really care if you like her or not. She's smoking because she wants to smoke. You know what I mean? Like,
oh, yeah.
So what if the ashes fall on your hamburger? Who cares? She doesn't care. Of course not. And then that just dictates kind of where like I take the page. I've always liked unique looking characters. I think it adds to the story. I think more inclusion is always better. I mean, that's one of the things at Vault we love, is we love inclusion. And I think like having a wide variety of characters, colors, shapes, personalities, like I think it's important.
Now, specifically with the technical aspect of it, how does one get good at drawing different types of faces? What's a good practice to get into that? You can tell this is a leading question because you've told me this before.
Yeah, I can tell you it was literal homework assignments from college. It was go to the mall for an hour and sketch everyone in the food court. That was your homework assignment for the night. You had to go, you had to draw everyone in the food court. Yes, I got looked at like, why are you staring at me? I'm like, sorry, I'm drawing, don't mind me. And then it went from seeing how people move and interact with each other in the world, and like, oh, look at this posture this person sits with. Like, look at this posture they sit with when they're eating. And, hands and faces are very expressive. And like, for me, that was capturing that, like the hands and faces of people, of like, everyone's so unique. and you have to be able to tell all their stories because they all have great stories. You know, everyone in the world has a great story to tell. And just being able to do all that. And then homework assignment got harder once it was like, okay, 2 minutes, you have to get there. Mike Manley was my professor, and he's like, if a guy jumps off a building and you can't draw him before he hits the ground, you're not very good.
Wow. Where did you study with him?
DCAD, Delaware College of Art and Design.
Nice. That's an intensive regimen.
Yeah, his assignments were pretty rough, but they were needed.
You spoke to movement and how characters move and everything, and you have a background in film as well. And I was curious how film and television, like, it's influenced your style, specifically your framing, the way that you place characters in scene and in panel. How does cinema play into your work as a comic book artist?
Yeah, very specifically working on animated films for a while and things like that. Just movement always intrigued me because you watch an animation and a lot of people don't realize how much work actually goes into that. You know, it's 30 frames a second. So for 1 second of one person taking one step, there's 30 drawings that go in there. So there's 30 stages of one step. And it's like, where in that 30 frames is this panel? And that's kind of where, like, I coach, you know, the camera work of the comic book is, you know, where am I in this one motion? Because emotion, there's wind up, there's follow through, there's squash and stretch. There's all kinds of elements that go into one simple movement, like taking a step. Their weight has to shift to one side, their head tilts, and then, like, every single person has a different way to take that same step as well. You know what I mean? Like, so there's no one way to take that one step. So that's kind of where, like, I love the movement and the capturing of people's movements.
So looking at how movement has played such a key role in your work on the page, are there any directors or cinematographers or anyone whose work in film or animation, you know, had an impact on you, you know, maybe not to the degree that, you know, Frazetta has, like you mentioned before, but anyone you can think of by name whose work you're like, oh, I got to have a Kurosawa moment in this, or like, oh, this is my Quentin Tarantino shot for this one.
That's a good one, of course. Kurosawa was great. But for me, like, the biggest influence probably be Ridley Scott. Early, you know, Alien, I burned that DVD out. You know what I mean? Like, those claustrophobic, tight shots that just make you feel so trapped on this ship. And then you realize you're trapped on there with, spoiler alert, this android. And then in another Alien, you know, you're just sweating watching that movie. And I'm not going to say, like, everything he's made has been like, my gosh, I have the revelation. But, like, yeah, he's definitely probably the one that comes to mind first.
Well, and those tight cinematic moments are also reinforce that character work you were talking about, like really getting in on people's faces and expressions and understanding them on a deeper level. That tight claustrophobic cinematography is like, oh, here's this character, and you're going to know them very intimately from feet away.
I think that really played into the book The Rush I did with Cy Spurrier. That was very much like, I wanted to really focus on faces and acting, and wanted those kind of like Ridley Scott moments where, like, there's this big swooping beautiful landscape of this, you know, Yukon snow-covered territory, and then you do close up on this gold miner's face who looks like he hasn't bathed in a year and a half. That's a huge jump to make. And so, like, I really wanted to focus in on, okay, I want this guy to feel dirty and exhausted, and he's on his last leg.
And the juxtaposition with that and pristine landscape that's sweeping and huge has that effect. I think, unlike, you know, the claustrophobia of Alien, you get a similar feeling of isolation where you have this huge thing and then you get to see the dirty, nasty, small human point of view within that massive landscape. If you haven't read The Rush, folks, and you're a horror fan, like, at all, what are you doing? Come on.
That one, I will say, I'm super proud of the way that book turned out. It was a huge challenge for me. In all honesty, once I got the script from Cy Spurrier, I was kind of intimidated almost. You know what I mean? Like, the script was so phenomenal. I'm like, am I really the right one for this? You know, but I'm super proud of the way it came out. I think it came out great.
Well, but he writes in such an approachable, down-to-earth way with very commonplace language. I can't imagine why that would have been intimidating.
The language just itself, the amount of research he did, I mean, like, I'm talking 30 folders of research photos and documents and historical figures. And, like, you know, when you read the opening issue of Rush, those are real places. That's real people. Those are real things. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, real spider monsters.
You know, I might have added that a little bit.
Well, I'm sure having a good time chat with Mr. Nathan Gooden and hearing all about the company and his process, and fabulous.
Can I make the code?
Guys. Huh?
Can I make the code? I want to make up the code for this commercial.
I'll let you make up the code.
Axe hole.
Use it in a sentence, Kyle.
Dan, you're an axe hole.
I got respect for you. I'm a little mad about it, but I got respect for you. All right, use the code AXHOLE to get 20% off the first 3 volumes of Barbaric. Please don't hold that against me. Kyle picked it, not me.
I've been sitting on that for a whole month.
Well, Kyle, I'm here to tell you it was worth it. You know me. I'll always commit to the bit, so don't be an axhole. Use the code and get that discount. Now back to Nate. You've developed all these tools. You've grown so much as an artist. You've established Vault as one of the biggest players in independent comics. So now, today, 2024, what is your daily work routine like?
Cry in the morning. No, I genuinely love my job. I think it's a privilege to do what I do, and I try to remind myself of that. But I wake up, first couple hours are going to be emails, Slack messages, helping, the team member that needs something, with print review or whatever. Then the next part of my day is going to be about 6 or 7 hours of just drawing. Just, if I'm inking that day or if I'm doing page layouts that day, cover work that day. And then in the final 2, 3, 4-ish hours are going to be meeting up with Tim Daniels, chatting through whatever's next on the horizon, basically starting to lay out my work for the next day. So if it's another page I got to ink, I'll be doing layouts, things like that.
Because in addition to being the senior artist in residence, you're always working on a Vault book. You do a lot of art direction. So what's that like to weigh in on other books that are in various stages of development and provide your perspective to other artists who are working in the Vault playground?
Honestly, really, really the most rewarding part, I think, of the job right now. I don't do it as much as I used to just because I'm so buried with, other things. And I think Tim Daniels does a fantastic job with this as well, is really just trying to get the best out of the teams, saying hey, try this, try that, or hey, what do you think of this? And for the most part, everyone's receptive to that. Because I'm not saying by any means, hey, this is the way it's done here, do this or you're gone or your book's getting canned. You know what I mean? No, it's more of hey, I'm here to help. Use me as a resource, if you're struggling with a page layout, if you don't know how to figure out how to get, 5 panels onto a page on this way, then I can help you. You know what I mean? I've drawn thousands of pages of comic books. I can probably have an idea of how to fix it. That's more of just a helping hand, a tool in Photoshop. Use me if you need it.
You have a couple of unique relationships that sort of combine both your work as an artist and your work in art direction. I'm thinking specifically of having other people draw Barbaric, having Robert Wilson IV come in, having Corinne Howell come in, having other people come into your sandbox. Don't worry, listener. I know it's 20 minutes in, but we're talking about Barbaric now. We're here. Don't worry. This is obviously very common in comics for lots of different people to carry the torch of a specific character, but it's less common in independent comics to have deigned multiple artists coming in to create their own work like this. So what was that process been like to invite other people into this world to play and interacting with them, coaching them, helping them with things, and then seeing what they do with it, see what they do with this world that you and Mike have created?
With Barbaric, this is my own personal goal. This was I never said it out loud to anyone, but it was just when you think of certain independent studios or certain studios, they have an icon, and I wanted, when you see Barbaric, it's Vault, or you see Vault, Barbaric's there. You know what I mean? And so part of that is just kind of forcing it down people's throats. And for me, I can't keep up with Mike writing wise. The dude writes insanely fast. And so it was, hey, I need help with keeping up, story wise. And we came up with these other worlds, these other characters. And I'm like, Mike, I don't have time to do this, and then my gears are turning and I'm like, this is an opportunity to really spin off some other characters and really give some backstories, some side quests, things like that. I kind of create a menu of items rather than hey, this is what the chef's cooking tonight. It's hey, here's a menu. You're looking for a female-led story, boom, you got it. Looking for a male-led story, boom, you got it. But it's all encompassed in Barbaric. And I don't know how Mike does it, but Mike keeps it all coherent and on the same path. There is an ending in sight. Yes, there's an ending in sight. We had the ending before we started, but it's been really cool. I mean, Corinne, she has the green light whenever she wants to come play in the sandbox again. She's always going to be doing B covers for the series. Whenever she wants to do a spin-off series, I'll be happy to assist again and help and grow the world even more.
It's clear that there's a level of care and a level of candor. And, we don't have house talent, quote unquote, at Vault, aside from yourself, obviously. But I think if you were going to make a list, Corinne would be up at the top. Corinne always does amazing work. She's got more books coming. And it's clear when she stepped into the Barbaric world, she already knew it. And her love of Conan the Barbarian is palpable in Queen of Swords. Queen of Swords, which is out now in trade. If you skipped it, you said, oh, it's not a main Barbaric book. You're a fool. Go back and read it. It's so good.
Yeah. And I've always said, Mike and I designed all these spinoffs and all these side quest things as you don't have to read them to understand the ending or to get the satisfaction of the ending, but the ending will be so much more rich if you read all of it and consume all of it, because there are things in these other worlds and these other stories that they do pay off in the main story arc. You know, they do pay off. So it's like, if you're going to cry, you're going to cry twice as hard because you remember that one thing from Queen of Swords. You remember that one thing from Wrong Kind of Righteous, things like that.
Yeah, you heard it here first, folks. Not only is there an ending in mind for Barbaric, but getting there and maybe the road getting there will probably be a tearjerker. The book has made us laugh so hard we cry. Now we're going to cry maybe until we laugh. I don't know.
Well, isn't that the kind of the key to like making someone really, really sobbing cry is like, you have to really feel for someone when it's their time, or if like, you know, a kingdom burns or something like that. You have to really feel for them. I think Mike's done a fantastic job of just like really making characters, you know, because we built Barbaric from character first out. We started with like, we want you to love these characters and care about them and where they go.
Well, speaking of characters, if somebody just like waved a magic wand, just handed you the keys to any character in comics or film, TV, whatever, there was a character out there, they're like, hey, Nate, do whatever you want. What character would that be?
I can give two answers. Film, it would be Predator.
Oh, a Nathan Gooden Predator book would be really good.
Give me a Predator. And in comics, I gotta go back to my first like comic love was Weapon X. Like, I would love to do a Weapon X run of like, I love that first Barry Windsor Smith run of like just how trippy the artwork was. It was so different from the Logan or the Wolverine we knew. It was like, whoa, what is this? You know, like this dude is savage, man.
I think both of those would be Marvel. So editors at Marvel, I hope you're listening. Get Nathan Gooden on a Weapon X reboot or a Predator book.
Oh my gosh, I would love that. I'd be breaking out the old school paintbrushes for that one, man. If I got a run of that, I would be doing all that hand done. Like,
I'm already into it. You don't have to keep selling it. Now, if we're gonna, you know, talk about other characters and other things, you've also like worked in a substantial amount of genres at this point. You've done sci-fi books, you've done horror books, you've done fantasy books, you've done books with, you know, some comedic tone. Is there a genre you've yet to tackle that you'd like to do?
not necessarily one I haven't done, but sci-fi, I would like to go a little deeper into a sci-fi story. I feel like the sci-fi books I've done have been kind of short runs. I'd like to do like a deeper dive into the sci-fi because like I really would love to do some unique panel work, some unique page layouts, because it's so different from like sword and sorcery, or like I would love to do a deeper dive into sci-fi. Like I said, like maybe like a creature feature on a spaceship or something like that. Like that would be kind of amazing.
Give it the Hayden Sherman treatment and go nuts with the panel layouts.
That insane person, man, those pages, wasted space.
Yeah.
First fan was right here. First fan was right here.
You said this to me before. You liked Wasted Space so much, you like dibsed Mike's next book, right?
That's exactly how it happened. Yeah, I read Wasted Space. I was working on something else. I read Wasted Space, this first issue. I messaged Hayden. I was like, dude, my gosh, this is amazing. Your work's amazing. And then I texted Mike and I was like, Mike, you're working with me on your next book. What do you want to do? Let me know.
That's one of my favorite footnotes to the origin of Barbaric. Because Wasted Space was so good, we got Barbaric, guys. That's why.
Yeah, he and I were working on something completely different as well. Like, I knew I wanted to work with Mike, and then we went through like 3 or 4 different stories, and we started developing one way out, and then I was just like, from that came Barbaric, and we're like, there it is.
So you're telling me there's like no hope of a Nathan Gooden erotica book?
Oh no, there'll probably be that one day. I don't think it's in the near future, but it'll definitely be there. Pretty booked for the next couple of years, but there will be one day. Yes.
I mean, you say Frank Frazetta, and part of what I think is butts.
So many butts.
I mean, I'm just saying, you know, if there was a Tim Seeley Nathan Gooden book, I wouldn't be mad about it.
I actually talked to Tim about that one day of like, hey, you know, you've been around. I haven't worked with you yet, so it'll happen one day. It'll happen when the right project comes along. I've been doing covers for Tim's books for a while now, and I'm doing covers for like some erotica stuff. It'll happen when it's supposed to happen, you know?
We got to wait for it. There should be some anticipation. So we're close, is what you're saying.
There'll be a climax one day.
There it is.
As I swig my water vigorously.
Victory sip. Ah, man. So here we are, February 2024, and we are on the 4th volume of Barbaric. What can people expect from Barbaric Born in Blood? And I guess, is this a good spot to jump on if you haven't been reading?
You might have teed me up for this one. Yes, this is the perfect spot for Barbaric fans to tell their friends, hey, there's there's a story that you should be reading, you can come on now. Because Barbaric Born in Blood begins with a recap of all the events leading up to this. So we kind of took the end of Hell to Pay as this is kind of the halfway point of the story we want to tell. So this next half begins with a recap of the first half. So first time readers, you don't have to buy anything extra. You can buy the opening. You won't have the rich history that we've created, but you'll have enough that you can jump in, start reading, and you can follow from now. So Barbaric Born in Blood is the newest arc, and basically we're focusing in on Owen, our main character. He's a barbarian that is cursed to do only good, and he absolutely hates it. Well, he wants to go murder and kill and drink and have sex with women and men and whoever. So he is cursed to do only good, and at this point is really torn between if this curse is really worth it, or should he just kind of surrender to it and just become like this lame superhero. And we really dive into his past, what it means to be a barbarian in this world. And quite literally, it means being born in blood. And one of the lines that is told Owen is, we were told we were born in blood. We never told it would be our own blood. So dive into the really, really violent past of this world and the different barbarian tribes. Other readers will know Steel, who is his partner, who is from another tribe, and the alliances they're making. Everything's starting to come down now. And so I feel like this second run of Barbaric is the chess game is going to start being played now. Like we've got the board set. Everyone has their pieces. Everything's in line. Now we start playing and we see who wins.
It's enticing. You can feel the energy. You can feel the momentum reading this first issue of Born in Blood of like, oh, shit's moving. We're not going to just have a romp where we get to meet another character all of a sudden. Things are moving towards some sort of end game, some sort of final point. It becomes pretty clear.
Yeah, this is the beginning of the end, as they say. This is where we will start to kill some of our darlings. Kingdoms will start to burn. Things will start to happen. And for me, this was one of the coolest villains that we've created so far in Auric, who is a half barbarian, half giant who was raised in a cage and left for dead until he outgrew his cage and broke it, leaving him deformed and broken and wanting revenge on the world. Ringo Starr's line in Tombstone, what does he want revenge for? Being born.
Damn good pitch, Nate. We should have you selling these books. I'm so excited to see the acceleration of events as things, stay funny and stay entertaining, but really move in this darker direction. What is it like to be constructing finite and real endings for characters in a medium where stories run forever, characters die, they come back, there's not real consequences generally in traditional superhero storytelling. But, with this, a long-running indie comic, you are finding a definitive ending. What is it like to construct that for these characters?
It's a bittersweet feeling. I just know for myself creatively, I don't want to just drag this out into oblivion. I don't want to drag it out until everyone's bored with it, including me. I've always wanted to have an ending, but I take a little bit of comfort in the fact that Mike and I have designed this barbaric world. It goes beyond Axe and Owen and Soren. Even if Owen and Axe and Soren's story is over, Barbaric is not over. So this might be over, this story might be over, but the world of Barbaric is massive. So let me take a break for a year and let us come up with something new and fresh for this world. There's a million characters we can come up with. Even if this is the end of these characters, it's not necessarily the end of Barbaric itself, and as you said before, it even leaves more room for other artists to come in and, show their spin on the world. Other writers come in and show their spin on the world. There will always be Barbaric. There will always be some Barbaric out there. It just might not have Owen, Axe, and Soren in it.
Let Nathan Gooden have a break, people. Let him take some rest. Give him his flowers, let him rest. Well, speaking of a million other characters, one of the fun things that fans have theorized about and really enjoyed about Barbaric is the introduction of additional talking weapons. Axe is an instant icon. People love Axe. Bloodthirsty Jiminy Cricket. What more do you need to know? He's a sentient Axe named Axe. But along the way, we've also met Gabar, whose soul is bound into a flaming sword. And now we've met Flail, who is one of my favorite creations and so funny. Is there a chance that we're going to meet any more talking weapons in this go-around of Barbaric?
In a word, yes. They are pivotal to the ending we have in mind. It might not seem like it at the time. Oh, there's just sentient weapons. They just exist in this world. There's a reason, and that reason is very important, and it'll come out when it needs to come out for the ending, but there'll be a few more.
Excellent. I speak not only for myself, but the amazing prop maker, Jesslyn Cupcake, who has made real-life versions of all of these weapons so far for us. Good to know she's going to keep eating on Barbaric. There's going to be more options for her to craft some stuff.
They're quite unique weapons as well, from Axe and Flail, they're polar polar opposites. And then like now there's a couple others that you're going to have very unique personalities, and the people that wield them are always important. So yeah.
You're going to wrap up Barbaric Born in Blood, and then you're going to do a book with John Jennings.
So excited.
You're excited. John's excited. I'm excited. Kyle's excited. Everybody's excited. Can you give us a little tease about the One-Eyed House, the book you're working on with John?
The One-Eyed House, yes. If there are any like Monkey Paw fans listening, it's very much in that vein of storytelling. It's a creature feature focused around an old plantation. I'm very excited. I've been doing a lot of research about like creature comics, creature movies, creature films. You know, at this point, we're still doing a ton of research. We have the outline done. We have the bullet points done. Now it's in scripting phase. So yeah, I'll be starting that pretty soon. Scary as hell, by the way.
I'm so glad you're doing horror again.
I love doing the Rush so much that it was like, okay, I want to do another deeper dive. And that's kind of what this is going to be, of like, just like, okay, so Rush was kind of horror, historical horror, you know, and then this is going to be like a deep dive into that of like, we're really going to be like in this world.
If you're a horror fan at all, or you're a Barbaric fan, if you're a fan of comics, I mean, freaking John Jennings is writing it. This thing is going to be, I don't want to say instant classic, but that's the vibe I'm starting to get. I'm personally excited for it, and I think anyone who enjoyed The Rush is going to lose their shit on this one.
Yeah, I think this is going to be kind of one of those Halloween staples that becomes like every Halloween, got to break it out and read it again. It's so iconic, but yet so inventive in the storytelling. John's just created something that's really taking like old tropes and it's really making them new and fresh, and it's going to scare the parents off you. Like, the story is scary as heck.
All right, Nate, if anybody wants to meet you in person, if anybody wants to see you, say hi, get some Barbaric stuff signed maybe, where can they catch you this year?
StokerCon, San Diego, ALA, San Diego Comic Con, New York Comic Con. I believe that's it for now, and possibly SuperCon.
Yeah.
That's still in the works. So that'll be the shows for now. It might change, might not.
You know, in the meantime, folks, if you're not going to make it to one of those shows, it's okay. We know you still love Barbaric, but be sure to pick up the brand new issue, Born in Blood, #1, and get it to your friends. Like Nate said, this is a good jumping on point. Let them come join the Barbaric party.
Good jumping on point, and this is one of the coolest villains, I think, to this point up in Barbaric. Oricus King is the coolest character we've created so far, I believe. So,
all right, go check it out. And, you know, any aspiring artists out there, go re-listen to this episode. Nate gave some pretty solid advice. You got a little bit of an art masterclass here, so, you know, be sure to take it to heart. He knows what he's talking about. Nathan Gooden, thanks, man. Thank you so much. This was a great talk.
Dan, Kyle, thank you so much for having me. Until next time, next book, One-Eyed House, maybe?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's get you and John on here for One-Eyed House. We'll talk horror. We'll talk blaxploitation. We'll talk the history of creature features. Yeah.
That guy would be a great podcast episode.
All right. I'll CC you on the email when I ask him. You can put some peer pressure on. I'll say this for Nathan Gooden. He's anything but an axe hole. See what I did there? That's a callback. It's a comedy thing because he said that earlier. This episode was produced by the axe hole himself, Kyle Foucher, hosted and co-produced, and whatever other titles I feel like giving myself, Daniel Crary. The logo was designed by one who's never an axe hole, Mr. Tim Daniel, and social media support was provided by Britta Bisher. The Vaultcast is a copyrighted production of Vault Comics, copyright 2024, all rights reserved. Axe holes.